My mother's hand lingered on it for a second too long, like she was afraid I might snatch it and run. The room smelled of cardamom tea gone cold and the faint jasmine oil my aunt always wore. Everyone was watching me. My father, my two uncles, my older brother who wouldn't meet my eyes. And across the table, sitting like he owned the air itself, was the last man on earth I ever wanted to see again. Karan Singh Rathore. He hadn't changed. Same sharp jaw, same unreadable dark eyes. Same way of holding stillness like a weapon. Only now he wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car, and the faint scar above his left eyebrow, the one I gave him 4 years ago with a shattered wine glass, caught the light when he finally looked at me. I felt the blood leave my face. No. The word slipped out before I could stop it. My mother exhaled sharply. Aarohi beta at least read it. Read it? I didn't need to read it. I could see the words marriage agreement, bleeding through the envelope like a threat. My hands started shaking, so I pressed them flat against my thighs under the table, digging nails into silk. The fan above us turned lazily, pushing warm air across my skin, but I still felt ice in my veins. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be. Not after everything. 4 years ago I had screamed actually, in the middle of his sister's engagement party that I would rather die alone than let Karan Rathore breathe the same air as me again. I meant every word. And now my own family was trying to chain me to him for life. I pushed my chair back. The legs scraped loud against the marble. Have you all lost your minds? My father raised one hand, the same calm gesture he used in boardrooms when deals were about to collapse. Sit down, Aarohi. This is not a discussion. This is a solution. Solution. The word tasted bitter. I looked at Karan again, searching for any flicker of surprise on that infuriatingly composed face. There was none. Only a faint tightening at the corner of his mouth, like he was already calculating how to manage me. My heart hammered so hard I was sure they could hear it. Because beneath the shock and the rage, a tiny, treacherous voice whispered the real question I didn't want to ask out loud. Why him? Why now? And why does some part of me already know I'm not going to walk out of this room the same way I walked in? If you're the kind of woman who stays up at night wondering how far family duty can push you before something inside you breaks, or whether a man you hate can ever become the one you can't live without, then stay with me. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because this story is only beginning, and I promise you the twists cut deeper than you think. I forced myself to sit. The envelope felt heavier than it should have when I finally picked it up. My name was printed beside his in elegant black ink. Aarohi Sharma. Karan Singh Rathore. Bound together by signatures that would decide everything. I met his eyes across the table, and for one dangerous second the rest of the room disappeared. Just us. The same charged silence that used to fill every room we were forced to share before everything exploded. You knew, I said, voice low. Not a question. He inclined his head, barely. I agreed yesterday. Of course he did. Karan never did anything he didn't calculate down to the last percentage point of benefit. But what could my family possibly offer him that he didn't already have? The Rathores owned half the shipping ports on the West Coast. My father's textile business was successful, respectable, but not in their league. So why? My aunt cleared her throat. The families have been talking for months, Beta. This alliance, it will protect us all. Protect. Another careful word. I looked at my mother's tired eyes, at the way my father's shoulders carried a weight I hadn't noticed before. Something was wrong. Something bigger than one unwanted marriage. Karan's voice cut through the silence for the first time. Deep, controlled, the same voice that once told me I was too emotional for business. We can discuss terms privately, Aarohi. After you've read the contract. Terms. Like I was a merger. Like the night he had pulled me into that empty corridor at his sister's party, and kissed me like the world was ending never happened. Like I hadn't slapped him hard enough to draw blood after he told me it meant nothing. I stood up again, slower this time. My dupatta slipped off one shoulder, but I didn't fix it. I need air. No one stopped me as I walked out. Not yet. But I felt Karan's gaze on my back the entire way, heavy as a hand between my shoulder blades. Outside, the Mumbai evening pressed in, humid, loud with distant traffic, carrying the scent of rain that hadn't arrived yet. I gripped the balcony railing until my knuckles hurt. For years, I had built a life. A small design studio that was finally turning profit. Friends who didn't know the Rathore name. Nights where I didn't dream about dark eyes and broken glass. And the way his voice softened when he thought no one else was listening. And now this. I heard the sliding door open behind me. Of course he followed. Karan never left anything unfinished. "We don't have to do this," I said without turning around. My voice almost sounded steady. "You know that's not true." He stopped a careful distance away. Not close enough to touch, but close enough that I caught the faint trace of his cologne, sandalwood and something sharper. "Your father's company is in trouble. Deep trouble. My family can fix it. But the banks and the old investors, they trust tradition. A marriage between us sends the right signal." I laughed, but it came out broken. "So I'm the signal now? The sacrificial Sharma daughter?" "No," his voice dropped. "You're the only one who can make this work without destroying both families." I finally turned. He looked almost human in the fading light. The scar I gave him stood out. Good. I wanted him to carry proof that I had once hurt him back. "And what do you get out of it, Karan? Another company to absorb? Another trophy wife who knows how to stay quiet?" Something flickered in his eyes then. Not quite regret. Something heavier. "I get a wife who already knows exactly who I am. No illusions. No pretty lies. That's rarer than you think." The wind picked up, carrying the first cool drops of rain. They landed on my skin like tiny shocks. I stared at him, at the man I had spent 4 years trying to forget, and felt the first terrifying crack in my armor. Because deep down, beneath the rage and the fear, a part of me remembered how safe I had felt for one single night in his arms before everything shattered. And that part was already wondering what would happen if we had to pretend, until pretending started to feel real. But I wasn't ready to admit that. Not to him. Not even to myself. I stepped closer, close enough to see the pulse beating at his throat. "I hate you, Karan Singh Rathore. I need you to know that before any paper gets signed." His gaze dropped to my mouth for half a second, then back to my eyes. "Good," he said softly. "Hate is honest. We can work with honest." The rain started falling harder, soaking through my clothes, but neither of us moved. Somewhere inside, my family was waiting for my answer. Somewhere inside, the rest of my life was being rewritten in ink I couldn't erase. And the worst part? Some treacherous corner of my heart wasn't sure I wanted to. The rain came down in sheets now, plastering my kurta to my skin, but I stayed rooted on that balcony, chest tight, mind spinning. Karan didn't leave. He never did when he wanted something. Instead, he stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat coming off him despite the downpour. 3 months, he said quietly. That's what the contract offers. 3 months to decide if we go through with the full ceremony or find another way. Your father's debts get restructured immediately either way. My family's name protects the business. 3 months. It sounded like a prison sentence. Yet something in his tone made it feel like a lifeline I hadn't expected. I searched his face for the catch, the manipulation I knew had to be there. All I found was that same steady gaze that used to make my knees weak before it made me furious. Why are you really doing this? I asked, voice barely carrying over the rain. You could marry anyone. Some obedient girl from a bigger family who wouldn't challenge you. His jaw tightened. A muscle ticked. Because I'm tired of pretending I don't remember that night too, Aarohi. The words hit harder than the rain. That night. His sister's engagement. The argument that started over nothing and ended with his mouth on mine, desperate, like he'd been starving for years. Then the cruel words after, when he pushed me away and said it was a mistake. I had shattered the glass in my hand trying to steady myself. Blood on both of us. Words that couldn't be taken back. I don't believe you, I whispered. But my body was already betraying me. Leaning fractionally toward him, drawn by the same magnetic pull that had always existed between us. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and brushed a wet strand of hair from my cheek. His fingers were warm. Steady. Then don't. Just read the contract. Give it the 3 months. For your family. For mine. After that, if you still want out, I'll make sure it happens cleanly. No damage to the businesses. No public shame. It sounded fair. Too fair. That's what scared me most. Inside, my mother was waiting with worried eyes and fresh tea. My father paced near the window. When I walked back in dripping, they all froze. Karan followed a moment later, suit jacket dark with rain, looking somehow even more imposing. I picked up the envelope again. The papers inside laid everything out in cold legal language. Financial clauses, living arrangements, public appearances as a couple for 6 months minimum if we proceeded. And one line that made my breath catch. Both parties agreed to attempt genuine cohabitation and mutual respect during the trial period. Genuine. As if either of us knew what that looked like anymore. I looked at my father. The lines on his face seemed deeper tonight. The business had been struggling for over a year, I realized now. I had been too busy building my own studio to notice how bad it had gotten. Family duty wasn't just a phrase here. It was blood. It was survival. I'll sign for the 3 months, I said, voice steadier than I felt. But that's it. Nothing more until I decide. Relief swept through the room like a wave. My mother hugged me tight, whispering thanks against my hair. My father nodded once, grateful. Karan simply watched me, something unreadable in his eyes. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of paperwork, tense family dinners, and moving some of my things into the guest wing of the sprawling Rathore mansion on the outskirts of the city. It felt surreal. My clothes hanging in a closet bigger than my old apartment. My design sketches spread across a marble desk overlooking manicured gardens. And Karan always there but never pushing. He left for work early, returned late, and we moved around each other like careful dancers who both knew the steps but hated the music. Until the night everything shifted. It was past midnight. I couldn't sleep, so I wandered down to the kitchen for water. The house was quiet except for the low hum of the air conditioning. I found Karan already there, sleeves rolled up, standing at the counter with a glass of whiskey and his laptop open. He looked exhausted. Human. The scar above his eyebrow stood out under the warm lights. He glanced up. Can't sleep either? I shook my head, suddenly aware I was wearing an old oversized t-shirt and nothing else. I crossed my arms. Business problems keeping you up? Always. He closed the laptop. But tonight it's something else. I waited. The silence stretched, thick with everything unsaid. I never apologized properly, he said finally. For that night. For what I said after. I was scared, Aarohi. Of how much I felt. Of what it would mean for both our families if I let myself fall. The admission hung between us, fragile. I set my glass down, heart racing. So you pushed me away and made sure I hated you instead. Yes. His voice was rough. And I've regretted it every single day since. I stepped closer without meaning to. The kitchen island was between us, but it felt like nothing at all. 3 months, Karan. That's what we agreed. Don't make me regret signing those papers. He came around the island slowly. I won't. But I'm not going to pretend anymore either. I want this to work. Not for the businesses. For us. When he kissed me this time, it was nothing like the desperate collision 4 years ago. This was slow. Tentative. His hand cupping my face like I was something precious. I kissed him back before I could stop myself, tasting whiskey and years of buried longing. My fingers curled into his shirt, pulling him closer. The resentment was still there, simmering, but something else was rising too. Something warmer. Scarier. We broke apart, breathing hard. His forehead rested against mine. Tell me to stop and I will. I didn't tell him to stop. The weeks that followed were a strange, beautiful kind of torture. Mornings where he brought me coffee exactly how I liked it without asking. Evenings where we sat on the terrace talking about everything and nothing. He came to my studio one afternoon, watched me work with quiet fascination, and later told me my designs were brilliant. No flattery. Just truth. It cracked my walls further. But old wounds don't heal overnight. There were fights too. Sharp words when he tried to fix things for me without asking. Cold silences when I accused him of still treating me like a problem to manage. Yet each time we found our way back. His patience surprised me. My own softening terrified me. Then came the real test. My father's biggest creditor called in a massive loan early, threatening everything. The only way out was a public merger event where both families had to stand united. Together. As husband and wife in the eyes of the world, even if the papers weren't fully signed yet. I stood in front of the mirror in a deep red sari, hands trembling as I tried to pin the palu. Karan appeared behind me, tall and devastating in a black sherwani. Without a word he took the pin from my fingers and fixed it perfectly, his touch lingering at my waist. "You look beautiful," he said softly. "But you don't have to do this if you're not ready." I met his eyes in the mirror. The resentment had faded weeks ago. What replaced it felt like coming home after a long storm. "I'm ready, Karan. Not just for them. For us." The event was a whirlwind of lights, cameras, and powerful people. We played the part perfectly. His hand never left the small of my back. When someone asked about our love story, he looked at me with genuine warmth and said, "It took us 4 years and one impossible contract to realize what was always there." Later, in the car home, the city lights streaking past, I turned to him. "I don't hate you anymore." His smile was slow, devastating. "Good. Because I've been in love with you for years, Aarohi Sharma. Even when you hated me." I kissed him then, right there in the back seat, pouring every unsaid feeling into it. The walls were gone. Only truth remained. 3 months became forever in the gentlest way possible. We signed the final papers on a quiet morning with just family around. No grand show. Just 2 people who had found their way through resentment to something real and deep and worth fighting for. If you've ever been pushed into a corner by family expectations and discovered that sometimes the person you swore was wrong for you turns out to be exactly right, drop a comment and tell me your own story. I read every single one. If this slow burn journey from hate to forever touched something in you, please share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances, and subscribe with notifications on. Because love rarely comes easy, but when it's real, it's worth every difficult step. What do you think happens after the papers are signed? Would you have given him those 3 months? Let me know below. And remember to hit that bell so you never miss when the next story drops.